Well, good morning, good evening, or good night, depending on where you
Good
are in the world today.
evening. Yes.
Indeed. How are you doing today, Rain? We barely had time to connect before our podcast today
Yes.
because we were both
Usually
like,
we have a little bit of a chat, but
yeah, we
well,
do.
I'm doing well. Lots of new stuff happening in the last couple of weeks. Getting
Hmm.
programming together, so running some art classes, and I'll let you know. Remember, we talked. I think it was two sessions ago about singing. I was mentioning that I haven't sang in years. Well,
Yes.
I'm now singing on Saturday nights, and it
How
is just
beautiful.
so much fun. It is so much fun.
Oh,
Last Saturday I sang so much that my voice was going hoarse at the last hour of the night, but it's been a
oh,
wonderful
amazing.
experience. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
because we need
incredible.
that balance, right? We're working so hard in life, and we need that. I mean, I'm still working. I'm on the clock, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it's
Mm,
one of my passions, right? So it just gives us that playtime balance, that fun in our lives
absolutely.
as well, right? So yeah, so
Absolutely.
lots of changes lately. How about
Incredible.
yourself?
It's also lots of changes, also having a lot more fun, in that I'm really doing work that I love and enjoy
Hmm.
every single day. And that has just been beautiful and incredible. And I'm seeing the rewards from that. And funny that you should mention about, doing something that you really love for recreation. I'm going to be getting back into martial arts, which I haven't done in quite some time.
Wow, that's
And
wonderful.
thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think we were supposed to start tomorrow, but it looks like we're only starting next week. It's a friend of mine who's actually started a gym, and yeah, he's just waiting to finalize setup, and then we're going to get going with that. And I bring all of this up because it's so interesting that one of the discussions that I've just had very recently um, with a colleague of mine is the importance of doing stuff for the soul and not just for the mind,
Absolutely.
because we can actually that's a whole topic for another time.
It
And I
is. It
promise, ladies
is.
and gentlemen, that we do have a topic for today that we want to get into, but I'll just wrap that up very quickly by saying that I think science is now catching up that a lot of disease that we run into in life is more often caused because there's some unrealized soul potential that is not necessarily work related, but
Mhm.
that we just completely neglected. And because we neglected it, our soul didn't get to expand the way that it
Mhm.
should and wants to. But like I say, that is a topic for
Well,
another time.
actually, Stefan, I think it could be a topic in of itself, but I think it also ties in with what we're going to talk about today. So, how about you introduce what we're going to talk about today, and then we can pull it in if we need to, right? Or if it happens.
Rain just read my mind because I was going to say that it does
Oh,
kind of tie in. So
it
our
does.
topic our topic for today is deception and seeing through it to optimistic realization, which is, gosh, kind of a beautiful. I just got chills as I said that. Like
It's like a mouthful.
it's yeah,
It's a lot.
deception and seeing through it to optimistic realization. Now, for those of you who didn't catch our last episode, the reason that this was the topic we chose was because in our last discussion, I think I mentioned that I'd switched on the news and I'd seen just the horrific things that were going on in Afghanistan. It was the same thing this morning. They're now talking about this huge humanitarian crisis that isn't even building, it's already there. Um, and I can already see that a lot of people are going, well, if that's how they wanted their country, then who are we to, interfere? Let's leave it at that. But what we were saying the last time was, first of all, there's so much out there that is just untrue, right? So mainstream media, no matter which side of the fence you fall on, whether it's right wing or left wing, there's so much information out there. Or even if you go into the what's I guess termed the underground media, there's still bits and
Or
bobs and
alternative.
pieces.
Or alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alternative media. There's still going to be bits and bobs that is just untrue for whatever reason. So, we label that as deception, or as sort of a what's the word? A catch-all phrase. But then what I think is so beautiful, Rain, is you said, how do we see through that, not with rose-colored glasses, but to an optimistic realization? Because I think the question that I asked last time is, how do I take this information that I'm getting, that I'm seeing, and how do I shift it just in my space? So let's not try to shift the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I shift my space? Oh, puppy. Um, to the point
Riley,
where
come here.
oh, bless. I completely understand, because it was
Well,
dirt day for us as well today, and
yeah, it's wonderful that they're picking it up, but he always barks every time they go by.
oh, of
You've
course.
really said a lot there, because first of all, without going too heavily into politics, but it's really difficult to do that these days, really, honestly. Like, there is just so much going on. So you said a lot there, because first of all, there are things going on in our countries and in our cities, but we want to just focus mainly on the country piece of it, because we as individuals that live in the country we live in, we vote, we participate, we don't, whatever path we take, we have our role in it. But the thing of it is that we are not the ones running the country. Okay, the way our systems are set up, they're set up whereby like a head of state perspective is what we see. So you've got this one individual, one prime minister, one president, and then you've got all of the minions under them, which is their crew, right? So, they say that when we vote for this or that, our voices are being heard, but we don't really know. We don't really know the truth. We don't know if those votes are being tampered with. We don't know if they're being overridden. So when someone that is a head of state of a country makes a decision, so for example, in Afghanistan, someone is making a decision there to overturn the country, who is that decision being made by? Certainly not the bloody people. Okay, because I'm pretty sure that those people that are being murdered and the people that are being tortured and withheld food, etc., I'm pretty sure that they didn't vote for this. So it's not the people. It's not the people. It's the heads. It's the heads of those countries that are making these decisions. And then you bring in the cabal type people who are ruthless, and we can call them satanic or we can call them evil, but I mean, they're dark. Generally speaking, their minds are not, and their spirits are not benevolent. So
no.
This now generates and creates the situations that we're having, like you mentioned, in Afghanistan and in Australia right now. They're going through a very difficult time as well. So I think what we're seeing, this is just my perspective, taking, like you say, down those rose-colored glasses. What I'm seeing is that, where was I going? Hang on. That things are happening sometimes beyond our control, for one. And
for sure.
Two, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it, right? It comes back to, the title that you mentioned. So where does the truth lie? What is reality? Where is optimism? Maybe you can speak to that. How do we, because you know what? This is what I was going to say. At any time of the day, that could be any one of our countries. We've seen what has happened to Canada, for example. I mean, I live in Canada, and we've seen Canada go from this, oh, we're so innocent and polite and naive. We're always known as that. Australia is as well. And we've seen our country's reputation go down the toilet, so to speak.
Overnight.
Now, did all the people pick that? I don't think so.
No, exactly. Exactly.
You know, there's many people still wanting to be proud of Canada and wanting people to love one another and to be benevolent and kind to one another. But what is happening, right? What is happening, and how can we fix this, Stefan, right?
So I've, interestingly enough, never been a big proponent of politics. Just never really had a huge interest in it, for the simple reason that, from my perspective, and this was not based on any research, it was just a gut feel, I felt that it was all hogwash. It was just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So I was never really intrigued or interested in it in any way, shape, or form. And then I started to go down my own rabbit hole just around esotericism and self development and all the rest of it. And I formed this opinion and this theory as to what society should look like. And I then was chatting to a friend of mine about it, and he goes, "Have you ever read Plato's Republic?" And I go, "No." And he actually gifted it to me for one of my birthdays. And I still haven't read it, but I started reading it, but it's very heavy going just in terms of the prose and how it works. But anywho, but he gave me the synopsis and he goes, "It's essentially what you have just said." And my theory on it all was exactly as I said at the outset. Take it down from sort of country level, this is the business, this is how it all runs, this is the president, ministers, all the rest of it. Bring it down to the individual and train each human to be the best version of themselves. Mm-hmm. Make them as autonomous as humanly possible. And I had this conversation with someone who, here in South Africa, another person, we had a long chat the one day about politics and all the rest of it. And she goes, "But we need government." And I said, "Well, for what? What do you actually need government for?" Mm-hmm. She goes, "Well, to run things like roads and hospitals and this and that." I said, no, you don't, because you have individual governmental agencies. We could just as well be run by an individual.
People in management positions could take care of those things. Yep.
Absolutely. And they do, right? That is actually how government runs. And chatting then to another friend of mine in the United States who turned around and said, because I always kind of growing up as a child, I half jokingly said that if I was American, I would probably be a Republican, but just one who believed in really lean government and that gay marriage does not actually cause cyclones. So that was like my running joke. And he said to me, "Well, actually, I think you would probably find that you are what is known as a libertarian," which is exactly that. It's loosely based on Plato's Republic as well. And I bring all of this up because, coming back to the whole Afghanistan situation, is I think that as people, we very easily hand our power off to someone else. And when I was having that conversation with that young woman here in my own country, here in South Africa, and she said, "No, but we need government for this, for that, and all the rest of it." I said, "Okay, let's assume you're correct. Why do you personally need government?" She goes, "Well, because of," and she started umming and ahhing. I'm like, "Okay, let's go with the basics, right? You pay tax. Your tax is supposed to provide healthcare, not so? Yes, except in our country, it doesn't. It doesn't provide free healthcare unless you're massively underpaid, which is a different topic, right? Because people should be getting a basic living wage that they can afford normal healthcare, but they're not. So already the people you've placed in charge have failed you. And that's not just here, that's every country on the planet. I think barring one or two. So let's go into the next thing, education, basic education. Are you getting that from your government? No, you get that from schools. You get that from, and here again in South Africa, it's mostly private. There are government schools, but again, only for people who
Mhm.
fall way below the breadline, which,
And
why are they in that
typically,
situation?
in Canada and the US anyway, if you don't have the cash in your bank account, which is probably 90% of people, you get a loan from the government, and then you take the next 8 to 10 years to pay that loan back.
Right.
So, you're
It's
paying for it yourself in the end,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. So I bring all of that up to go, how do we get ourselves into the situation? Why do we get into a situation where, and I'm not pointing fingers at any one country, I'm pointing a finger at humanity as a whole.
That's
Why do
right.
we get ourselves into a situation where we allow ourselves to be deceived? And we do it on everything.
Well, it's
We say to,
because of gullibility. Because it's
it's
like you said,
gullibility.
we are surrendering our power. And
Yes.
just to insert in there, we see that everywhere. Because look at the nucleus of the family. There are many
Mm.
healthy families, yes, but there
Oh,
are also
yes.
very, very many unhealthy families and relationships. And so when, I don't want to pick on men, but, majority of abusers in relationships are male. There are some female
Absolutely.
too, of course. I'm not going to say there isn't. So
No,
when
of
that's
course.
happening, when someone is being verbally or mentally or emotionally abused, and they're holding their power and control over another person within a home, that's degrading that person. That individual then
Mm.
goes out into the community. And so see how that ripple effect, right? It's the ripple effect. And so I think when we look at the gamut of things that have happened in the last, I think we're almost going on 19 months now of this whole journey that the world is on.
Mm.
We are seeing, it's like a mirror image in a sense, all the way from the individual and the nucleus of that individual or family, all the way going outward into society and like you say, government. So we're actually seeing the imbalance of power and control.
And we're seeing the intense disrespect of personal choice and personal power. And I
Yes.
think that is so important because that is what happens. The moment we give away our power on something small, the moment we obfuscate, is that the right word? No, it's not. The moment we demur from taking responsibility for a decision,
Mm-hmm.
as above, so below. We make it
Yes.
so much easier for the bigger thing to slide by, and the bigger thing to slide by, and the bigger thing to slide by.
Yeah.
And so it happens.
And that's how
Come
manipulation grows, right?
exactly,
Starts
exactly.
with that little, they say, give an inch, take a mile. That's how it starts.
That's exactly how it starts. And then, I always go back to religion because I have my own personal issues with it, as I think a lot of our listeners know by now. But I have always said to, even when I was active in a specific church, I always used to say to my fellow congregants who would be like, oh, throw all your cares upon God. And I'm like, okay, yes, that scripture is there. It does say that. But it also says that God created us to be incredibly powerful. So there's
We
one
we are
thing
made we
to,
are made in his image. And so
in his image.
if he is, he, she, whatever people want to say, I mean, he is just a term.
Yes.
Don't get hung up on the terms. But if he is
Yeah,
powerful, then so too are we, because we were created in his image.
absolutely. And my rebuttal would always be, yeah, sure, absolutely. Throw all your burdens upon God, but don't forget that faith without works is dead. So you can have all the faith in the world, but if you don't put the effort in,
That's right.
that comes from your own power, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. And yet,
It's
what
it's
happens
it's
in most churches?
responsibility. It's about
It's
taking
responsibility.
responsibility, right?
And in most churches, that is completely just that's whitewashed. You don't need to take responsibility. Just confess your sins. everything will be fine.
Mhm.
You then go out into the secular world. Well, it's not my fault, it's my manager. Or it's not their fault, it's the boss. Or, I have a horrible job. Okay, so why don't you change? Well, no, I can't because there's nothing else out there. That's a lie. Of course there is.
There's always
But
more.
there's always more.
I mean, you've
We've taught
experienced that
ourselves
change as well as I
yeah,
have in the last month or two. We've both been
alone.
going through that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all just comes down to taking responsibility, but we don't do it. We
Mhm.
choose to rather go, oh, well, this is horrible. Too bad
Mhm.
I can't do anything about it. Yes, actually, you can.
And then just put the blinders on and walk away, which is very much so what is happening a lot now is like, why are some people doing nothing and others are doing so much to try and salvage humanity and freedom? It's
Uh,
like from one extreme to the other,
it's and
right?
there should be a middle path where it's don't worry about the big stuff. Just focus on the stuff that you can control in
That's right.
your life. There's a quote that I use so often, um, but never in a positive sense. And it's from an old Star Wars movie, actually. And there's the scene where the entire Senate, and it's thousands upon thousands of worlds that are represented in the Senate, and this law gets passed, and it's obviously something that is going to take away everybody's power. It's going to take away everybody's right to choose. But everybody's so scared that they go along with it. And there's this round of applause, and it's just this rapturous moment. And the key character turns to her friend and says, "This is how freedom dies, to the sound of thunderous applause." And that line has stuck with me
That's
because when you look at a horrific failed state, well, I would say soon to be failed state, like Afghanistan. Not to point fingers again, please, anybody who's listening, we're not trying to, say, well, you're bad for XYZ. It works for some people, it doesn't work for others. The question that it raises always for me is how did it get there? And it got there by ordinary people like you and like me standing by and going, yes, please, sir, do everything for me.
Mhm.
So that and yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. So that when that person turns around and says, well, now because I did XYZ for you, you have to give me this. Well, that seems like a fair exchange. And you allow it. And that to me is actually how freedom dies. It's not necessarily to thunderous applause,
Yeah.
but it starts with little things in our lives that we refuse to take
Mhm.
responsibility for. I won't even
It
say
starts with
change.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts with ourselves. You're right. And so here's one of the keys is we must traverse through the deception to be able to see reality. So, but what is reality? People often argue that fact. Oh, well, this fact and this fact and this fact, people argue about what, like, like you say, mainstream media or alternative media. There's this whole, war or battle about what's true and isn't true, and the deception. Oh no, that's not true. Oh yes, this is true. I fact checked it. And there's all of this kind of, media stuff happening now because we're such a media based world now. But really the reality of it is we must look within and tap into our soul. We have to tap. You mentioned earlier something about you had that gut feeling. That is
Mm,
how we can know the truth. And
yes.
there's something magical about that, right? There's something magical about it because it's almost seems surreal when we tap in to something that we can't see in front of us. There's this tone of it feeling surreal. But really, that's where the truth is. That's where the all-seeing eye is. And so when we see these events happening, and I've had this happen to me many times in the last almost nearly 2 years, is when I see something, say on the news or something comes across my news feed, I tap in with my soul and my spirit into what's going on, and it like a how can I say it? Like it bounces back emotions and thoughts that tells my spirit and within my very soul that it's a lie, that it's deception, that it's not true. And this is where, we are coming to these days now where we must tap in order to know the truth, because we can't always rely on what we're seeing or what we're hearing anymore. We really can't, because there's underlying layers, like you mentioned with Afghanistan. There is probably so many political agendas and power hungry agendas in the whole situation. Even in Australia and Canada and the US and everywhere that all of this stuff is really heavy handed, there are agendas, and it's all about power and control. And so it's very important for us to tap in and to listen to that still small voice so that we can override that deception and come to that optimistic space. Because once we connect with and know the truth, now our brain can go into creative mode, and we can start to generate positive solutions, right? We can connect with people we can make a positive difference, right? So there's just so much, there's just this whole bouquet of beauty and benevolence that can happen on that
Absolutely.
journey.
And I'd like to just say a huge thank you there, because I was starting to think like, gosh, I've gone really dark really quickly, and I need to bring this back into a light space. And you did that so beautifully right there. So thank you, Raine.
Thank you, Stefan.
But that's seriously, because that is, and I was wondering how exactly to do that. Like, how do we, bring this back? And you're right. There's a lot of deception out there. The first step to getting to that optimistic realization is being able to tell fact from fiction. And that check inside is different for different people. And it's funny enough, actually. So I'm using a lot of science fiction references today, which is also interesting.
That's
but
okay.
Anywho, there's a book, a series of books that I absolutely love just for their complexity and their scope as a commentary on actual world society as it stands right now. And it's a book series called Dune. And there's this faction in the book who are known as truthsayers. And one of the truthsayers is asked how she is able to know when someone is lying, and without fail. And she says, because when somebody tells me a lie and I look inside myself, my inner self turns their back on them and walks away. And I thought, as a child, I remember that being really interesting to me. And it's something that stuck with me as a physiological response.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward and start doing my practice and my meditation, and you start to realize that each person actually does have a physiological response as their energy vibration increases or decreases. And a lie automatically decreases your vibration. The truth will just exponentially raise it. So when something is true, and I think people will know this from our podcast, I'll get chills all up and down my left side. And pins and needles and all the rest, because my body is having such a strong reaction to truth.
Right.
Let it be something untrue, and personally, I'll get a weird sensation on my right shoulder. It's different for different people.
It's different for everyone, yes, because I experienced similar body signals as well. But again, like you say, it's different. It could be like a burning sensation or chills or, itching hands or your nose. They used to say that was the witches. If your nose would itch,
Right.
that was, but it really, what it is spirit. The spirit is,
Yes.
we're connecting with spirit, and we're getting those signs in our body to help guide us.
Absolutely. And a lot of those old wives' tales that people say, like, oh, if your palm itches, it's money coming, or
Right.
things that's actually true.
Yes.
Your body does respond to your spirits. Start listening, start feeling, start testing it. Actually, I think that would be my first port of calls. Start to test it. If you have something
That's
that
right.
you say constantly, like, oh, if whenever my left shoulder pains, it's going to rain. Okay, great. Test other things. Figure out other stuff that your body does in response
That's
to
right.
everyday stimuli. And then you'll start, the more you listen, the more you'll start to hear.
Like, let's say you're getting ready to go somewhere and you've got quite a drive ahead of you, and you're feeling like, even since the day before, you just like feel this resistance in your body, but you're like, no, I'll be okay. You rationalize it. But then as you're getting closer to the time to leave, your stomach is nauseous. It's in circles. You're like just feeling like you need to heave. That's happening for a reason.
Yep.
We need to pay attention to those things. When you're talking with someone, look into their eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. And I know there are many people that can pull the wool over our eyes, so to speak, as they say, but it's also another indicator. So it's almost like we have to be detectives now at this point, because we have to look at new and different ways of connecting to be able to decipher deception versus truth.
Thank you for saying that and bringing up the points around being detectives, because right at the outset we said there's so much deception out there, no matter which media portal you're looking at. There are things that are untrue. And unfortunately, as often happens, the darkness outweighs the light. I won't say it's stronger, but there's definitely more of it. It's up to us to really look at everything and go, what is true here and what isn't? And on the flip side of that coin, figure out what doesn't actually matter. Because that's the other thing, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that just doesn't actually matter. It just doesn't. Like, one of the things that springs to mind just around free will and freedom of choice is the whole mask debate. Now, personally, I don't like wearing a mask. I'm not pro it for myself. I'll do it in a store because the government demands it, right? It's by law that has to happen. Sure, I'll do it.
Well, even if we don't believe in it, like you say, we will comply because we just don't want to put up a fight. I mean, we've seen the videos where people, do that, and then the police are called, and it's just a whole, a whole drama.
Unnecessary, unnecessary drama.
Exactly.
But then I see people who are anti-masks who will then confront every single one of their friends who is pro wearing a mask. And I'm going, how does their wearing a mask affect you in any way, shape, or form?
Yep.
It doesn't. That's their free will. That's their choice.
That's right.
If they want to wear a mask when they're alone in the car, I'm going to have a little bit of a chuckle about it. I've seen the memes. I've sent a few of them on myself.
Oh, I know. It's so funny, right? Oh, my God. The first time I saw that, I laughed so hard. I'm like, you are in the car by yourself.
By yourself.
or outside. Or you're outside. I mean, seriously, you're outside in the fresh air.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
In the fresh air.
It's funny.
But at the same token, I'm not going to go up to that person and go, why on earth are you wearing a mask? You're out. It's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Live and let live.
That's right.
And this is what happens then is it becomes so easy to become polarized. We've discussed polarity in the past. It becomes very easy to become polarized on these issues. And that is then when it's also very easy to lend our power to a cause that doesn't really deserve it.
I see what
You
you're
know?
saying. Those are things that we don't need to use up our brain power, our brain space
No.
to even worry about those things, because it's not relevant. It doesn't matter if I had fish last night for supper or pasta. Like, does that matter to you? No, you don't care. It's the same thing with the mask. Like, it doesn't matter what
And the more
others are
you, the
doing.
more, yeah, exactly. And the more energy you put into it, the more you attract that same energy back. And I'll never forget, funny enough, someone who I've mentioned on the show before that I follow on Instagram, Phil Good, did a live the one day. And he said, because a lot like me, doesn't believe in wearing masks for himself, but very much for free will. And he says he finds it so interesting that a lot of his friends who are either anti or pro mask, when they go out for a walk in the evening, they will get attacked by people on the other side of the fence for either wearing or not wearing a mask. He says, and he will walk down the same street, right, in the evening without his mask on, and people will walk past with their mask on, and he'll greet and go, "Good evening." But because he doesn't care, and he's like, "You're a sovereign being,
Yes,
you do you," he
that's
goes, "All
right.
I get back is good evening," and they walk on, they move on with their lives.
That's right.
Learning where to put our power, I think, is the next step in the whole reaching that optimistic realization. So it starts with learning how to spot deception when it
Mm-hmm.
arises.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, spotting something that doesn't really matter either way, it just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then learning to just respect other people's viewpoint if it really doesn't matter. I mean, that
And
old saying, yeah.
oh, sorry. I'd like to hear the saying before I make my point.
No, I
The
was just
old
going to say
saying.
it's the old saying of pick your battles. You know, you can't
Mm-hmm.
fight every battle, otherwise you'll
That's
lose the
right.
war.
That's right. Situations are going to happen in the world. They're going to happen like on a global scale. They're going to happen on a home scale. So, all the way along that gray scale. And so, like you say, we need to pick our battles. So let's say something happens, um, you know, with a friend or a coworker or someone in our family. It'll affect us because it's closer to home. How we deal with our emotions and our mental state and how we manage them is crucial. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
it's something that causes us great anger. Maybe we were affected by it. Take some time to process your emotions, work through the mental piece of it, right? Might take you like all but 5 minutes. It might take you 5 days. Like, who knows, right? But work through that. Take responsibility, work through it. Look at, it's like taking a prism out and looking at it from different angles. You're gonna get different colors, right? You're gonna see different colors and lighting. So look at it differently and look at your role in it or how you were affected by it and try to grow from that experience. Because when we hold on to that heated emotion, frustration, disappointment, anger, all of those things,
Mm,
we may feel like, oh, it's all on them, like you had mentioned this earlier. But really, it also affects us. And that frustration and disappointment and anger is going to change our energy. So when we make peace with it and we process it and we try to understand it a little bit more, because things happen to us for a reason or around us for a reason to grow and to understand more, then now we can step up. We can step up a
mm,
level. We can move up that scale towards greater enlightenment.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm loving this particular episode, and I'm going to say something, and Rain, please feel free to disagree with me. But I honestly do feel like this is one of the most powerful episodes we've ever done, hands down, which is saying something because every episode we do is pretty damn powerful. But I feel like this is, yeah, I feel like
I
it's just
think
one, it's
because,
the most powerful.
well, I think because we're getting to the root of things. We're getting to the
Mm,
heart. We're getting to the heart of things, because what society in the dark world, and you said, you were going on about that. We have to talk about it. We have to bring it out into the light. We have to
yeah,
be in touch with it, because to do otherwise, we're being naive and we're being dismissive.
absolutely.
It's all there. It's all there before us. So bringing it out is important. Bringing it into the light, and looking at it, talking about it, and then finding some positive solutions, because this is what is growing us. Um, we don't want to dummy down the spiritual aspect of our being anymore.
Mm-mm.
We're way beyond that. We're way smarter than that. Like, think of the city of Atlantis. It's almost like we're in Atlantean times right now. When you look at it like on a greater scale, we are in Atlantean times, because what happened with the city of Atlantis? They found the power in higher vibration and energy.
Mm.
And so what have we been coming to in the many years? We've got the forerunners that introduced us into, just think positive, right? People like Robert Schuller, and there's lots of them out there. So those people were like the leaders into
Mm.
thought, into positive thought. And so now we've developed and we've grown and we've become more introspective, and we've become more connected with the divine and the universal spirit world. And so now what is happening across the world? All of the darkness and the dark energy is trying to destroy it. And when we talk about this, I immediately see in the heavens the battle going on between the dark sorcerers and the archangels of light. I can see the war going on. And so what's happening now, you had said something about that earlier, about it's now here. It's now on the earth. And that's what we're seeing, is this battle for, this battle against good and evil. That's what we're
Mm.
seeing. And it's causing us to take a stand, to make choices, to grow, to, yes, when we get shot down with all of the ugliness that's going on, to raise our awareness, to raise our vibrations, so that we can better understand and we can grow to a higher level of spiritual awakening, basically. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely
So,
necessary.
oh, for sure. I'm loving where this conversation is going. And I'm actually so sad that we're on a bit of a time crunch today because, as always, we could go for hours, I know, but I seriously feel like we could go for hours on this one.
Yes.
But I wanted to just bring it back to a personal realization that really crystallized for me over the last 44 minutes, actually. And that is that I think when I spoke about Afghanistan last week, I did it from the perspective of I saw what was going on television. I saw this humanitarian crisis brewing. I saw the horrific things that were about to occur that are happening not just there, but across the world, right? We know that. And I went, what can I do to not change that because I can't? I'm not going to go there or do anything. I'm not. Okay, that's not going to happen. But how do I shift the energy where I am to the point where it maybe just impacts two people? I can just get two people to have their energy shifted, to draw a line in the sand and go, I'm taking back my power right here, right now. And they help two people each.
That's right.
And they help two people each. It's like that old story of the man in China who said, I just want one grain of rice per block on the checkers board, and I want it doubled for each block.
Mm-hmm.
And the emperor laughed at him, and by the end of it, he bankrupted all of China in rice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. It's this exponential effect that just grows and grows
Yes.
and grows. And I suddenly realized as we were having this conversation that this is us doing it. This is us doing
That's
the
right.
actual work.
We're like the little ants, because there's millions of us and billions of us across the earth. But what happens when ants come together and they're, they find this, like, I don't know, what do ants, what a carrot, or let's just use the visual of a little strip of a carrot or something. And all of them, like a log, are marching together, taking this find home. And that's all of us helping each other, and not, like you say, it doesn't have to be millions, but all it takes is to help two people.
Yeah. So I think that is what I'm going to leave our audience with today is don't try and change the world. Just try and be the best version of yourself you can and help two people. Just help two people. And it'll grow from there.
And I would say, the greatest gift that you could give to yourself, which in turn you would give that gift to the world, is to connect, to tap in, to ask the divine to step in and help you, to guide you, because we, in our human brain, the cerebral brain that we have, we can often easily get stuck when we're inundated with information. So to always remember to, keep that connection. It's about a soul connection, because we came from the heavens. And so we're here for a short time. And so it's really important for us to do all that we can while we're here. And so staying connected is a huge piece, because that is the heart of our journey and the steps that we take into tomorrow.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Raine, any final thoughts before we both have to dash? I really do think that this has been such an incredible. Was that it?
That was it. Like, brilliant. Live. Okay. Just simple. Live. I mean, we spend,
live and let live.
We spend so much time, and as a society, we know that suicides have multiplied during this time. Addictions, depression, anxiety. We know that all of these things have really impacted people's lives. But, just give yourself a kick in the butt and just, it's going to happen, but just live.
I love it. I love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Raine and Steph. This has been an incredibly emotional episode for me, actually, because it really does get me riled up. But I hope that whoever sees this, listens to this, finds the impetus they need to just reclaim their personal power, and as Raine says, to just live. I think that's really beautiful.